Good morning, everyone. Today's reading is by Jonathan Sachs, and it's called The Dignity of Difference. My test of faith is whether I can make space for both dignity and difference. Can I recognize God's image in someone who is not in my image, whose language, faith, ideal are different from mine? If I cannot, then I have made God in my image instead of allowing him to remake me in his. We only encounter God in the face of a stranger.
This slightly longer reading is from the Bible, Genesis chapter 2, verses 24 through 31. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." And God said, "Behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food." And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day.
"What's that?" a man asked as he gazed into the corner of a room in which they were sitting. That's the laundry basket," his acquaintance answered, after glancing briefly at the conglomeration of clothing on the floor in front of them. No, not the hamper. Next to it," the man replied. "I don't see anything next to it." He looked harder at the floor upon reply, but to no avail. "Oh, never mind. It's just my last shred of dignity. It may be small, but it's still present." Ah, yes. The wisdom is as great as ever with this Sunday morning comic from the far side. But seriously, y'all, this is no laughing matter. Like no other point in time, the weeks leading up to the November elections every 4 years always make one stare a little harder at the ground in front of them, likely for two reasons. First, we tend to direct our gaze downward at the floor in a show of embarrassment in response to the ways of which our role model-esque political leaders publicly act this time of year. These are our chosen representatives, after all. And on the other hand, many peer downwards at this time of year with the hopeful eyes in an attempt to find the last shred of that thing that we like to call dignity, which can easily get overlooked this season. Now, in keeping true to my own attempt to stay dignified, coupled with a deep respect for the separation of church and state, I tend to tread extra lightly. This time of year in order to avoid bringing politics into the pulpit or to start a riot amid our otherwise friendly progressive congregation. However, that being said, when Andy and the gang hit me with this week's topic on dignity, right about the time of the most recent political debate, I couldn't help but be brought into a discussion. In doing so, my goal this morning is not to side with either party. You all can do that as you see fit, starting with lunch following the service. But instead, my goal is to answer the question as to whether or not there is still a place at the table or in the corner next to the laundry basket for something so seemingly insignificant as dignity here in 2024. And note, we will start this with a simple Webster's definition of the word, of dignity, which is to be worthy of decency and respect? When thinking about that question, my immediate thoughts don't go towards either candidate specifically. They've both had their ups and downsides. Nor do I care to focus on any points of contention that were presented in their spirited televised discussion the other day, but instead to the process itself, a process that we as a country support with signs, stickers, sayings, and various forms of propaganda that often denigrate the dignity of both people involved. Hence, point one for the day. And this may be a challenge for some of you to accept, but here goes. As it turns out, both candidates, Democrat and Republican, conservative and liberal, male and female, black and white, are still actually people at the end of the day. People made out of love and worthy of love, and even deserving of love, created in the image of God, regardless of the political preferences they hold, the parties that they represent, or the toupees they do or they do not wear on their head. So with that said, I want you each to do an experiment for me this morning following the service. I want you to take your hands and open up your palms so you get all your fingers out, and on both hands, reach them into your pocket. Then listen attentively throughout the rest of the morning, making note of each time that a candidate is mentioned in the conversation. We will then start out with...
I found a reading before doing this service that I thought was apt, and turns out we didn't have time for it, but now we do. This is adapted from an essay by the Ethics Center, an Australian organization helping people live and act according to their values. It's called The Other. It's sometimes said that if any of us were stranded on a desert island, there'd be no need to think about any moral code. Maybe so, maybe not, but it shows just how hard it is to make our way in a world jam-packed with other people, all of whom are owed respect. Caught up in our busy lives, we can take the people around us for granted. In the worst cases, we objectify and commodify them, treating them as tools for our own purposes rather than people with rights and goals of their own. A common solution to this is to remind ourselves of our, quote, shared humanity. If we can just realize how similar we are to people around us, we'll stop treating them poorly. But is another person's mind that easily attainable? Can most of us really put ourselves in the shoes of, say, a Rohingya woman being persecuted because of her faith, responsible for 3 children, none of whom have eaten in days? The word other can be a benign term used to describe people different from us. As soon as we think about what something is, we naturally think about the opposite. But the term can easily become malignant. The process of othering occurs when we transform fellow flesh and blood humans into abstract entities, and that opens the door to mistreatment. A logical alternative to othering is to turn to what we have in common rather than what sets us apart. But by focusing on only what is similar between us and other people, we lose an important tool in discovering their personal identity. When we look at people as being like us, it can help us relate, but it can also be a bit narcissistic. Instead of looking at them as someone unique, complicated, and different, we treat them like a mirror. We try to find ourselves in other people instead of searching for what defines them as them. This otherness, which the philosopher Emmanuel Levinas called alterity, is something to seek out and celebrate. We should recognize that each other person is a universe of mystery to us.
Dignity is simply defined as a state or quality of being worthy of honor and respect. What's important to note is that the definition does not come with any prerequisites. Honor and respect, those are pretty big words. But what would it look like if these were intrinsic elements bestowed upon our fellow humans for their time in office, or moreover, for their time here on earth? How do we go about deciding who is worthy of our respect and who has earned our honor? In other words, who is dignified and who is dejectable? Who is honorable versus who is intolerable? As you see, we are now approaching the tip of the iceberg. The question is, are you all able and willing to respect and honor both candidates? And if not, what about their human existence is holding you back? I got kind of put onto this sermon by a member of our congregation who asked if I could actually preach a sermon that was unbiased about the elections. So I took up the challenge. Question is, with both candidates in mind, would you shake hands with both? And if not, is that which is keeping you from doing so a statement of your own dignity or a statement of theirs? Let's step out of politics now for a moment and take into account the local resident homeless man who spends his evenings out on the street corner by your house, soliciting spare change and a bite to eat. We don't often ask what this neighbor's stance on immigration is, or how they ended up in their economic situation. Nor do we question their political party or choice of where that $5 contribution of ours is going. Instead, we freely share an empathetic ear and look on them with an empathetic eye. Hopefully, as that would be the case for our church-going citizens to do. Now that I think about it, though, it's becoming more and more the case that many individuals have become timid when dealing with trusting the homeless. So in order to continue this unbiased trend, let us say the subject of our context is a scruffy stray puppy. Now, who here wouldn't show sympathy and empathy to promote the dignity of a stray puppy? That said, what separates our homeless, hapless hobos from other individuals or degenerate dogs? Working class individuals, diverse individuals from other political parties created in the image of the divine. Shane Claiborne alludes to this yearning for dignity when stating, "It is not living without a home that is truly hurtful. It is the responses from individuals who see you as such that it truly stings." Shane continues on saying, "When I sleep in the park curled up under the blankets, under the newspaper of the day with the blanket, I'm shunned for wasting space. However, when napping next to the same paper, I'm considered a dignified human being taking advantage of the day. Where does this second standard come into play? Does a Harris shirt or a MAGA hat disqualify your new acquaintance from being shown respect? Do either of those articles of clothing discredit them from being treated like a human being? What if that hat or shirt was from the local thrift shop or shelter and bought with the sole purpose of keeping warm? Where do we draw the line? As Edwin Whipple stated, dignity is often the veil between us and the real truth of things. What's more is that there is no way of truly knowing the real truth in our society. Thus, we often wear a veil and pretend to know the situation based on the words and deeds of others. That's my point this morning, so take note. I am not anti-politics nor anti-elections, nor am I anti-Harris or Trump. Instead, I am anti-allowing others to think for me because I fail to think for myself, while acknowledging my divinity or that of which others speak of. And in this sense, I must say that neither party truly expresses me because we as a people tend not to always think for ourselves, but make judgments in regards to what others say, think, or do, all the while tallying up our fingers on our hidden hands. And remember, as it's been said, it is if you judge another for their responses in response to your own experiment, every finger you hold down points directly back at you, especially in approach of November. That little intro aside, let us return to today's reading, starting with the more familiar of the two, the old tale from the book of Genesis about the creation of humankind in the image of the divine. Male and female, Democrat and Republican, conservative and liberal, all one in the image of God. Note, too, that I use the conjunction and, not or, in this sense. What a tremendous showing of self-dignity and esteem for God to create an entire race of human people in his or her own image. To have that kind of self-pride is to promote your own image throughout the people of the world. And what's more, to summarize their creation with the simple statement that it was good, that we are good, that you are good. What would it take for us as a people to see our divine essence in our fellow human citizens, in all fellow citizens, in all of creation, as different and unique as they may be? After all, diversity is the root of dignity. Dignity doesn't take place despite our differences, but it is derived from them. In his book, The Dignity of Difference, which we read from the earlier passage today, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks writes, "My truest faith test is whether or not I can make space for both dignity and difference." He goes on to ask, can I recognize God's image in someone who is not in my own image, whose language, faith, and appearance are different from mine? If I cannot, then I have made God in my image instead of allowing God to be made in hers. Not sure about you, but that sounds a little conceited to me. You see, as Sacks concludes, we only encounter God in the face of a stranger. Our natural egotistical way of approaching the divine is to create him, her, or they in our own image, instead of seeing ourselves as representative of the he, she, or it that created us. What would it look like to see the God different? What would it look like to see the divine as present in all of our differences? To see God's face in the stranger? You know, far before the Bible ever said, love thy enemy, it commanded that we love thy stranger. In Deuteronomy 10:19, the Torah states, Hagar ki germer haichem betres misrayan. Y'all got that, I'm sure. But just in case, that means love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Strangers still? We are called to truly see and appreciate the beauty of the stranger in, well, the stranger. If we glimpse the essence of God in a dignified way when Camille or Trump took the podium, or when that resident homeless man spoke up from the midst of his sidewalk slumber, how do we achieve such an unbiased perception of creation that represents a truly unbiased God? How do we keep from pointing fingers back at ourselves when speaking about fellow humans, dignified members of creation? So take today as an opportunity to be complacent. Take today as an opportunity to compliment creation, whatever. That was a Freudian slip. Whatever side they represent, because at the last check, God was above making and taking sides. Are you strong enough in your faith to show respect to your running mate? And if not, what holds you back? What a beautiful day it is to spend a couple minutes practicing loving on the opposition. And what a beautiful gift it will be when you become strong enough to do so without holding the opposite hand in your pocket.